In this video, we'll look at the different systems hosting companies use to protect their servers against security attacks, and how their layer of security is not the only one you'll want to incorporate. WordPress is a website application which should have its own security measures. While hosting companies provide a variety of systems to protect their own servers, the applications installed on the server, like WordPress, are usually the weakest link in security. By the end of this video, you'll have a good idea of what to look for in a hosting company, as well as how to add additional layers of security to your hosting account even before you secure your WordPress installation itself. In this video, I'll go through my recommended hosting companies, and we'll look at what WordPress.org says about security and hardening WordPress. Hardening is typically a security term for making a web application more secure or hardening its outer shell. This is a great page to read at the codex at WordPress.org. It's called Hardening WordPress. I'm just going to go down and point out a couple of things. First of all, security is not about perfectly secure systems. This is basically impossible. It's basically about employing the appropriate controls that, within reason, can allow traffic to visit your website, but it limits bots and hackers and other attempts from getting in and compromising your site. So there is a complicated dynamic, as stated here, between hosting companies and the security of your website. One of the main points right here, if you read this, is that hosting companies make a certain amount of effort to secure their servers and the hardware that you use at the server and the hosting company. They have some different levels of security, and we'll talk about which hosting companies do what. But what they're really designed to do is protect their own servers from being hacked. When you install WordPress on a hosting company's servers, it is your responsibility to secure those web applications as well, on top of what the hosting companies can do. All of the web hosting companies that I use and that I recommend in this course use something called a web application firewall inside of their servers and their stack where they host WordPress sites. And this is basically a firewall between attempts at hacking and well-known hacker IP addresses, etc., and types of attacks, between that and your website that's hosted on their services and hardware. So SiteGround employs a very common web application firewall that's an open source one called Mod Security. And on their Mod Security website, it basically explains what it is. It's a cross-platform, open source web application firewall. It enables the server to defend HTTP and HTTPS traffic against attacks. It also allows them to implement specific advanced protections and create ones that are specifically built for their server space. Flywheel has a more extensive security system, and they have actually free malware removal. If your site does get hacked, they're going to go in and fix it for free. They also have security at the server level. They use a service called Sucuri that they're partnered with in order to provide a third-party web application firewall that's probably even more powerful than Mod Security. And at Cloudways, they also use a web application firewall that they've created there. And even though I've had more bot traffic to manage in terms of slowing down my site at my Cloudways websites, this has been a great secure platform, and they do regularly patch the servers and that host the applications, and they minimize the number of services open to the internet. That's what a web application firewall does. So if you're researching hosting companies for your sites or for your business, I'd recommend you ask about web application firewalls and security processes that are in place at the server level. Now, an additional web application firewall, or a layer of security that's provided by a third party that you can sign up for separate from your web hosting company, exists from several third-party companies out there. Sucuri at sucuri.net is a great website security company, and one of their services is a website firewall. You can see in their graphic here that they'll allow traffic to come into their network, as well as potentially spam, SQL injections, hackers, brute force attacks and bad bots out on the internet, and they'll filter out a lot of that bad stuff, and they'll balance the load and only send legitimate traffic towards your website. They do that by altering the DNS and having you point your website traffic from your domain name to Sucuri first before it reaches your website. Their service is a paid-for service, and it's probably the best out there for WordPress. Cloudflare is another service at cloudflare.com, and they provide a very similar web application firewall for free. Some of the most common types of attacks are called brute force attacks. These are actually bots that come to your login page. They set up services and bots to try and guess your username and your password. Now, brute force attacks are the most common, and one of the problems with these types of attacks is that this is actual traffic that goes to your website, and it can slow it down. And so there's different ways of protecting your website against brute force attacks and unauthorized login attempts that might slow down your site and actually eat up your bandwidth as well, making your server space and potentially your hosting cost more. We'll look at these next types of protections in the next video when we look at security plugins for WordPress specifically. I'd encourage you to do your own research to find out what you can about security at the server you choose to host your websites, as well as different layers that you can incorporate yourself. There's some great information at wordpress.org on hardening WordPress, as well as brute force attacks right here. This is a great page to read for yourself. And then I'd recommend checking out Cloudflare and Sucuri with their website application firewalls. And then if you do use a hosting company like SiteGround and Flywheel and Cloudways, you know you're already getting an excellent professional and secure service on which you can build your WordPress security. In this lesson, you learned how your hosting company should provide some level of security filtering in the form of a web application firewall. Plus, we went over some third-party services you can add to further harden your server space against attacks. In the next video, we'll look at several security plugins for WordPress so that you can block the most common areas of vulnerability for brute force attacks and hacking attempts on WordPress-powered websites. Plus, you can use these plugins to monitor the traffic to your site, continuing to improve your site's security and speed over time.